Hey guys, tonight we're heading up a winding road into the mist, where the trees lean in just a little too close, and the air carries a stillness that doesn't feel natural. You're following faded road signs in a language you only half recognize, the kind that hasn't been taught in schools for generations. The asphalt under your tires cracks and splinters the farther you go, until finally it gives up and becomes gravel. The GPS signal fades. Your phone dies for no reason at all. You don't need directions anymore. The villagers are waiting. The place doesn't have a proper name. On maps, it's just labeled Zone 53, a gray smudge near the Carpathians that everyone skips past when looking for hiking trails or mountain retreats. But locals in the surrounding towns whisper about it. They call it the village where no one dreams alone. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, I'm curious. Drop a comment with your location and what time it is where you are right now. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You park the car at the edge of the forest because the road refuses to go farther. It's as if the village has to be approached on foot, as if it won't allow itself to be reached by anything made too recently. You walk the last half mile under trees so thick the sun barely makes it through. Eventually, the forest opens into a clearing, just wide enough to reveal a cobbled square, a dried-out fountain, and maybe 20 houses. Not modern houses, wooden, crooked things, their roofs sagging like they've been bearing secrets too long. The chimneys cough faint smoke that smells like old incense and burnt pine. The air feels soft in a way that doesn't make sense, like it's been dreamed into place. As you step onto the cobbles, a man is already standing there, gray coat, dark eyes. He nods but doesn't speak. He hands you a small cloth bundle. Inside is a wax earplug, a candle stub, and a smooth stone carved with a spiral. Don't let it hear you dreaming, he says. That's all. By now, you've figured out something isn't right here. The villagers move slowly, quietly. They don't make eye contact for more than a few seconds. Their windows are all covered in heavy drapes, even in daylight. A few of the doors have bells hanging from the inside, not outside, so they'll know if something gets in while they're asleep. You spend your first night in a spare room, lit only by that stub of a candle. The pillow smells faintly of lavender and ash. You sleep lightly, but not lightly enough. Around 3:17 a.m., you check the clock afterward. You feel the first tremor, not in your body, in your mind, as if a second consciousness is brushing against your own, testing the shape of your thoughts. The dream is soft at first, a forest, but wrong. The trees are upside down. Their roots hang from the sky. The ground is made of shallow water, and beneath it, faces. Hundreds, maybe thousands, all turned upward, mouths moving silently. A bell rings in the distance. It's muffled, but massive, like it's tolling from the other side of the world. And then you see the fire. Not flames exactly, but the air begins to curl, shimmer like heat rising off asphalt. One of the trees, if you can call them that, bends down and opens like a mouth. From it something steps out, a woman, or a silhouette shaped like one. You can't see her face, only her hands, long, ash gray with too many joints. She lifts a finger to where her lips should be. You wake up gasping, the wax earplug on the floor beside the bed, the spiral stone cracked in half. The villagers don't ask what you saw. They know. They've all seen it too, and not just last night, every night, for nearly 100 years. It started with a boy named Marek, born in 1924. He was 6 years old when it happened. Just an ordinary night, bread with lard for dinner, rain tapping the windows, his mother singing the usual lullaby. At dawn, he was screaming. His eyes were wide open, but they weren't looking. His hands were clawing at the mattress, and he kept mouthing something they couldn't understand. No one could calm him, not even when they held him down. When the village priest arrived, Marek bit his hand and howled a single word before falling silent forever. Spirala, the spiral. The boy never spoke again. He lived another 62 years without ever closing his eyes, without ever sleeping again. A medical impossibility, but somehow he just remained. Sat on a bench each day, staring toward the forest. They fed him, cleaned him, turned him when his joints went stiff. He never moved on his own. But he never died either, until the bells returned. In 1986, the night before Marek passed, The village heard a tolling sound in their dreams, deep, hollow, and familiar. When they awoke, his body was gone from his bench. Nothing left but a spiral drawn in dust. After that, the dreams began spreading. First, only Marek's siblings, then their children, then strangers. Scholars would later call it a mimetic sleep contagion, though they could never isolate any biological cause. All they knew was that the dreams were spreading by proximity, and that the only ones safe were those who never fell asleep inside the village borders. No matter how many times outsiders came, scientists, priests, folklorists, they all dreamed once and either fled or vanished entirely. The last known case involved a neurologist from Prague who left behind only her tape recorder. The final entry on that tape is the sound of a bell, and someone whispering, "She's coming through the trees again. She knows we're trying to wake up." The whisper wasn't in the neurologist's voice, it was in yours. Section 2. Morning in the village isn't like other mornings. There's no rooster call, no sun cutting across the rooftops in golden streaks, just a damp, silver mist that never seems to lift. The villagers rise slowly, blinking like they've just come back from somewhere far deeper than sleep. Some limp, others cough as if they've breathed in smoke. No one speaks until well after noon. You step outside and realize they're all staring at you. No suspicion, no malice, just curiosity. Like they already saw you somewhere, in a dream maybe, and they're trying to figure out what version of you walked in. An old woman approaches. Her back is bent, her hair white and thin as threads of fog. She reaches into the folds of her coat and pulls out a locket. Inside is a miniature sketch, drawn in charcoal and faded almost to dust. It's you. Not kind of you. Exactly you. Same face, same scar on your chin, same half smile you give when you're trying to pretend you're not overwhelmed. She touches your cheek and whispers, "You're early this time," then walks away. You try to laugh it off, but your hands won't stop shaking. Later that day, you sit with a group of children near the dried-out fountain. They don't play like normal kids. They braid thread into spiral shapes, tie it to stones, and drop it into the well. When you ask them why, one boy shrugs and says, "Sen, so she knows who we are." "Who?" They don't answer, but one little girl starts to hum something. A lullaby. 6 slow notes. The same tune you heard in your dream. That night, you asked to sleep in a different room, one farther from the others, maybe in the old barn by the edge of the village. You tell yourself it's for better air, but deep down, you know you just want to isolate the nightmare, see if it's really following you. You wedge the door shut, line the floor with salt, and press the cracked spiral stone to your chest. You fall asleep fast, too fast. This time the dream starts in fire, not a burning building, a burning forest. Trees made of bone and bark spiral up into a blood-orange sky. Crows sit on every branch, silent, their eyes glowing like coals. And beneath the canopy, the bell rings again. Gong. It shakes your bones. The ground opens, and from the earth crawls a child. Not a ghost. Something far more deliberate. His eyes are stitched shut, his mouth sewn tight. But somehow he still screams. It's a scream you feel inside your teeth, like someone cracking your molars from the inside. You stagger backward and trip into a hollow space, falling through layers of dirt and root and memory. You land hard, on stone. You're in a chamber now, lit only by flickering candlelight. Spiral symbols cover every surface. Walls, ceiling, even the skin of the robed figures kneeling around a black pool in the center of the floor. They don't speak, but you hear something anyway. We buried her to stop the echo. You try to turn, but your body is stiff, like it's no longer yours. You recognize one of the robed figures. It's Marek, but not old, young, alive, eyes open, and he's holding something. A bell. He lifts it, and you wake up. You're not in the barn anymore. You're in the woods, face down in the moss, fingernails dirty, mouth full of blood. Your left hand is closed around something. You pry it open. It's the locket the old woman showed you. But the sketch inside is no longer just your face, it's hers. The woman with no mouth. That's when you finally ask the question that's been building since the moment you arrived. Why is the village still here? One of the villagers, an old man with milky eyes and one hand made entirely of wax, answers softly. Because she hasn't left yet. And suddenly, it makes sense. The nightmare isn't spreading, it's contained. This entire place is a prison, not to keep you out, but to keep her in. Historians argue whether the village was ever properly documented. Some say it's a cartographic ghost, something added to maps as a joke or mistake. Others claim it was destroyed in a fire in 1932. There's even a regional myth that the land itself refuses new foundations. No buildings ever stay upright, no graves ever stay closed. But you're standing here. You've seen the spiral tiles in the square, and the fire still burns in the dreams. So maybe the truth isn't lost. Maybe it's just waiting. And now that you've dreamed it too, you might not be able to wake up alone. Section 3. The village has rules. They're never written down, never spoken outright. But you begin to notice them. No mirrors, no photographs, no sleeping in pairs, no speaking of the dream after sunrise, and above all, no bells. You don't understand it at first, but there's a kind of rhythm to daily life here, a slow, deliberate pace, like everyone's walking through deep water. People don't rush, they don't yell. You've seen children get scolded, yes, but never harshly, as if every raised voice might be heard on the other side. On the third day, the fog thickens, so much that the entire village square disappears in a white veil. You hear the sound of sweeping, someone dragging a broom over cobblestones, and follow it until you find an old man cleaning spirals into the dirt with the bristles. Over and over. One large spiral made of hundreds of smaller ones. He doesn't stop when you approach. "You're one of them now," he says. "Who?" He shrugs. "It'll root itself in you now, always does by the third night." And he's right. That night, the dream returns, not as a storm, not as fire, but as something much quieter. You're lying in a bed that isn't yours. The room smells of damp parchment and something faintly sweet, beeswax or old sap. You try to sit up, but your arms are heavy, numb. The walls around you breathe, not figuratively. They expand and contract like lungs. Shadows crawl slowly upward, defying gravity, whispering as they rise. Then, the bell. But this time, it doesn't ring. It chimes once, then whispers your name. Only not your current name. A name you haven't heard in decades, one you haven't used since childhood. You jolt awake, sweating, and your pillowcase is burned through in the center, as if something hot pressed against your skull while you slept. The villagers don't react when you tell them. They just nod and hand you another spiral stone. But the boy at the well, Toma, the quiet one who hums lullabies, pulls you aside and says something no one else will. "She's choosing you," he says. "Who?" "The bell wife." You stare at him. He's no older than 8. How does he say something like that so calmly? Toma draws a spiral in the dirt. She needs a voice. Her own got stitched shut when they buried her, so she makes dreamers instead. Then he skips off, like he just told you what time dinner starts. You do some digging, not just metaphorically. There's an old field behind the village, half swallowed by blackberry bushes and overgrowth. The villagers avoid it. You only find it because you wander too far, following the sound of humming that seems to echo backward like it's being unsung. You find a stone marker, flat, blank, until the sunlight hits it at the right angle. Then, like something burned into it ages ago, you see the faint shape of a bell. You start to dig. Not with a shovel, just your hands, clawing through earth so dense it feels baked. Eventually your fingers strike wood. Rotten, splintered. A coffin? No, a box Astal's. Dozens, each with a spiral carved into torso and no eyes. But one doll is different. It has a bell for a head. The moment you touch it, your nose bleeds. The world lurches sideways. Your ears fill with the sound of crying, not your own. And someone begins to speak through you. "You burned the chapel. You rang the bell. You made me sleep. Now dream with me." You collapse. You wake up 3 hours later. The box is gone. But the grass around you is perfectly flattened in a spiral. When you return to the village, no one says anything, but they look at you differently, with pity and fear. That night, the nightmare changes again. You're back in the chapel, only this time it's intact. Tall, stained glass windows filter in moonlight. The air smells like rosewater and iron. Candles burn in impossible places, on the walls, in the air, even on the ceiling. They don't drip, they don't flicker. And in the center of it all stands a figure in a wedding dress. The veil covers her entire face, but you feel her gaze, not on your body, on your thoughts. She holds a bell in one hand, and in the other, your spiral stone. She raises the bell, but doesn't ring it. She waits, as if expecting you to speak first. And when you don't, When the silence stretches, she tilts her head and begins to hum those same 6 notes. And now you understand. The lullaby is not a song to soothe, it's a summoning. Historians still argue whether shared dreams are scientifically plausible. Some blame cultural suggestion, mass psychosis, even underground gas leaks. But there's no record of a village like this. No documentation of an entire population dreaming in synchrony every night for a century, with newcomers inevitably joining the pattern. This isn't folklore. This is ritual memory, and it's choosing you. Section 4. You don't sleep the next night. You try. You really do. But your body won't let you drift. It knows now. Knows that sleep is not rest here. It's invitation. And you don't want to go back. Not to the chapel. Not to her. Not to that silence humming louder than a scream. So you sit in the guest house, staring at the spiral stone you've now glued back together. You keep it close, as if it can do more than just crack in your hand when the dream grows teeth. Around 2 a.m., you hear movement outside. You peek through the drapes and see 3 people walking toward the square, 2 men in coats too modern for this village, and a woman carrying a small silver case. Outsiders. You can tell by the way they move, brisk and curious, like people who still believe they're in control. You slip your shoes on and follow, quiet as ash. They set up in the square. The case unfolds into a mess of wires, lenses, and blinking lights, tech that looks painfully out of place next to the moss-covered fountain and crooked houses. The woman speaks into a recorder. Dream Hunter Team 3. Initial scan suggests low magnetic interference. Target. Shared nightmare phenomenon. Phase 1 begins now. Dream Hunters. You've heard the term whispered by the villagers but thought it was myth. Urban legend stuff. But here they are. Real, moving like scientists but with the edge of something else. Like they've done this before, and it didn't end cleanly. The woman pulls out a vial filled with thick black liquid and pours a drop onto the cobblestones. The ground absorbs it like dry paper soaking up ink. Immediately, the air changes. It thickens, gets warmer, your skin tingles, and then you smell wax. The same scent as the chapel, the same scent as the woman in the veil. You try to warn them, step forward, but your mouth won't open. You're stuck, paralyzed. The spiral stone hums in your pocket. The vial pulses, then pops. A black mist erupts from it, rising like smoke but falling like water. It pools around the team's feet, and then she's there, the Bell Wife. Not fully, just the outline, the shape. But it's enough. The tech begins to spark and scream. The blinking lights die. The recorder catches fire in the woman's hand. She doesn't even scream, just looks at you, eyes wide and melting, and mouths something you never forget. How long has it been ringing? Then she's gone. All of them are. Vanished. Not vaporized. Removed. As if memory itself has been peeled back and rewritten without them. And the spiral stone in your pocket? Cold now. Dead. You fall to your knees and retch. When you return to the guest house, the villagers are waiting. They already know. They always know. The old woman who gave you the locket, her name is Magda, pulls you aside that morning and tells you the rest. Not the whole story, but enough. She was there the first time the Dream Hunters came, in 1967. They brought sedatives, scanners, EEG machines, a priest. They lasted 4 days. On the 5th night, every bell in the village rang at once. Except there are no bells. Haven't been for decades. The villagers melted them all down after Marek's 2nd episode, poured them into a mold and buried the shape deep beneath the square. But something still rings. Magda whispers, "The sound isn't mechanical. It's remembered. We don't hear a bell. We hear the idea of one." That same day, you walk to the edge of the lake just north of the village. The water is black, still, and quiet. Locals don't swim there, don't fish, don't even speak near it. But you see something strange. At the bottom, barely visible through the murk, is a spire, a steeple, a chapel tower, and just beneath that, a figure, draped in white, arms folded across her chest. You realize the truth as your breath leaves your lungs. They didn't bury her in the ground. They sank her. The chapel you dreamed of, it was real once. A place for ritual memory. A sanctuary built not to worship the divine, but to protect against the echo of sorrow. A sacred memory container. Until it failed. Until someone rang the bell and let her out. Historians still argue whether the dream contagion could have stemmed from a single person, someone with a rare neurological disorder, perhaps, or a shared trauma passed down through generations. But none of those theories account for this. A full cathedral lying submerged beneath a lake no one can name, a steeple with a bell that still tolls underwater, and a woman who was not buried with prayer, but sealed with silence. And you've seen her now. Twice. No one survives 3 sightings, not intact, not alone. That night, you don't sleep in the village. You walk out into the woods, spiral stone in hand, and lie down beneath the stars. You listen to the trees breathe. You wait, and just before sleep takes you, you hear the bell. Faint, distant, but closer than before. Section 5, it tolls only once. A sound too big for your ears, but too intimate for the sky. It lands inside your chest like a memory you were never meant to carry, something older than the bones that hold you up. And when your eyes close, because they must, you return not to fire, not to the chapel, but to something worse. A schoolhouse, old, wooden, crooked. It leans like it's ashamed of what it remembers. You sit at a child-sized desk. Your legs barely fit beneath it. There's chalk dust on your hands. You look around and see 20 others sitting in the same impossible posture, all adults, all people you've never met, but somehow all familiar. And standing at the front of the room, her, the bell wife. She wears no veil now, just a linen dress, yellowed with age, fraying at the sleeves. Her skin is dry and cracking, like painted clay that's been dropped too many times. Her eyes are sealed shut with wax. Her mouth, of course, is missing. Yet you hear her, inside your own head. Spell it. The chalk in your hand begins to move. I-R-L. Each letter you scrawl takes something out of you. A childhood birthday, the taste of your grandmother's soup, the name of your first pet, gone, erased, swallowed by the act of writing. The dream tilts, the desks vanish, the walls melt like candles. You are kneeling on the stone floor of the drowned chapel again. A circle of figures in waxen robes surrounds you. They chant, not loudly, not in Latin or any language you recognize. It's the lullaby again. 6 notes, over and over. You turn and she's there, not walking, not floating, just there. The bell wife presses her waxy fingers to your chest, and suddenly you feel everything she remembers. The village as it was, before the chapel, before the dream. There were no bells, just names. So many names. Her real name was Luda. She was the village's memory keeper, a kind of living archive. People came to her when a loved one died, when a birth was forgotten, when a wedding was meant to be sacred. She kept it all, in her mind, in her voice, until she spoke too much, until her memory carried not just fact, but grief. The villagers began to dream what she remembered. Her memories infected their sleep, grew roots in their minds, and wouldn't let go. The spiral had begun, not carved, but spoken. So they silenced her, ritual binding, wax over the eyes, thread through the mouth, burial beneath a church built just to hold the echo. And even that wasn't enough, because when a memory is that heavy, that lonely, it doesn't die with the host. It finds a new one. The villagers didn't ring a bell that day. They rang her name. You wake with a scream stuck in your throat. The trees above you sway as if they're breathing with relief. You're not dead, but you're not alone either. Something followed you out. Back in the village, your presence shifts everything. Children won't sit near you. The spiral you carved into the guest house wall has widened on its own, gaps appearing where your knife never touched. The lake has receded 3 feet overnight, revealing the broken tip of a steeple cross. And worst of all, people are dreaming her again. She had faded, dormant, a myth beneath the surface, until you brought her shape back into the world. You try to leave, walk the gravel road out, but it loops. Always back to the square. Even with a compass, even walking a straight line, you always return. You sleep again despite yourself. This time, silence, a void. Nothing. You think you've escaped the dream, but when you wake, your fingernails are blackened, your teeth are bleeding, and your spiral stone, it's singing. A dull hum like a tuning fork buried under your pillow. You crush it beneath your boot. It doesn't stop. You drown it in the lake. The water turns warm. You burn it, and the flames take the shape of a face. Historians still argue whether ritual trauma can transcend time. Some claim group belief can physically shape environment, turn metaphor into matter. A few even theorize about dream topography, the idea that repeated visions can scar reality like storms on rock. But this is no theory. This is the village's collective penance, wrapped in a nightmare that never ends, because the memory at its heart was never allowed to die properly. You were supposed to forget. You were supposed to let it fade. But now, you remember too much, and she remembers you. Section 6th night. You realize there is no longer a difference between dreaming and being awake. You watch the villagers during the day and wonder, how many of them are still truly here? How many are already lost? Their bodies moving on autopilot while their minds are trapped somewhere deeper, somewhere woven into her spiral? Because you feel it too. The blur. Sometimes you blink and find yourself standing in rooms you don't remember entering, holding things you didn't pick up, humming songs you don't know the words to. The worst part? You don't feel afraid anymore. Just compliant, like you're part of the routine now. The dreams no longer wait for night. They seep in through the cracks of your thoughts, while chewing bread, while lacing your boots, while staring too long at a pattern in the wood grain that shifts when you're not looking. You ask Magda, one of the last elders with a sharp memory, how people survive this long. She doesn't look up from her knitting. You don't, she says, then adds, but some people get lucky. Some people forget. That's when she tells you about the silent bell. It's not a legend. It's real, and it's buried. Long before they built the chapel, long before the bell wife ever dreamed too loudly, the village had a way of cleansing memory, not with flame, not with salt, not with prayer, but with silence. A bell forged without a clapper, a symbol, not a sound, rung once by touch, not by noise. They say if you hold it while sleeping, the spiral uncoils. Not for everyone, only for those she doesn't need, only for those who've given her nothing worth keeping. The problem is, you're not sure you qualify anymore. You've seen too much, shared too much. She might want you now. Still, you search. Magda tells you where to look. Beneath the oldest house in the village, once a watchtower, now a rotted husk near the tree line. No one has lived there for decades. The roof caved in years ago, and the floorboards are more whole than wood. But there's a cellar, hidden behind a shelf of jars filled with dead bees and yellow wax. You pull it aside, descend the stone steps. It smells like soil and forgotten ink. The air grows thicker with each step. At the bottom is a single object resting on a stone pedestal. The silent bell. It's made of bone, or something like bone, smooth, pale, and cold, but pulsing slightly in your palm. You hold it. Wait. Nothing happens. You sleep there on the dirt floor. No dreams, no nightmares, just dark. When you wake, you cry for the first time in days, not out of fear, but because your mind feels clean. Quiet. Still. You tell the villagers. They stare. Magda shakes her head slowly. That's not what was supposed to happen. What do you mean? It only silences those she doesn't want. And then you understand. It didn't stop the dream. It merely caught her attention. She let you go, for a moment, to study you, to test how much more she could get. That night you dream again, but this time it's not the chapel, not the schoolhouse, not the fire. It's a road. You're walking it, barefoot, cold stones underfoot. Ahead of you, the bell wife waits, but she's not alone. Behind her stand the dreamers, hundreds. Some you've met, Marek, Toma, the scientists, others you've never seen, but they all have one thing in common, spiral carvings where their mouths should be. She lifts her hand. You kneel without question. She doesn't speak, but you know what she wants. She wants your name, your truest name, the one you whispered only once in a dream you forgot the morning after. You try not to say it, but your lips part, and the spiral burns across your tongue. You wake up screaming. Your mouth tastes like wax. Your pillowcase is soaked in salt water. You didn't cry. Something else did. Historians still debate whether ritual silence has actual neurological effects, whether sensory deprivation can induce hallucinations vivid enough to mimic spiritual visitation. Some link it to echo chambers in the subconscious, others to trauma loops passed down epigenetically. But none of those explain this. You went to sleep holding a bone bell no one believes exists, and you woke with a spiral burned into your palm. The villagers keep their distance after that. Even Magda, even the children. Only one person approaches you again. Toma. He says just one thing before running off into the fog. She knows you heard her real name. You don't know what that means. Not yet, but you will. Because the spiral has started turning faster now, and you are standing at the center. Section 7. The day begins with silence. No birds, no wind, Even the trees seem suspended mid-breath, as though the whole village is afraid to move. You open your eyes and realize you're already outside. No memory of walking, no memory of leaving the house. Just you, barefoot in the square, standing at the center of the spiral pattern someone has freshly etched into the cobblestones. Except it's not a drawing, it's burned in. You kneel and run your fingers across the grooves, deep, hot, still faintly glowing, and then you hear it. Not the bell, not this time. A heartbeat. Not yours. You glance down, the spiral is pulsing. It's alive. You stumble back, the thudding growing louder, syncing with the rhythm in your chest. And as you watch, you notice something even more impossible. The spiral is growing, slowly, like a vine winding outward from the center. You look up. Every window is shut, every door locked. But behind each, you feel them watching. The villagers, all of them, silent as if they too have just woken up in the square, as if this moment has played out before, over and over, and they already know what comes next. You don't wait to find out. You run, back to Magda's house. She's waiting for you, not surprised. You stepped in the center, she says. I don't remember. You don't have to. She does. She sits you down and begins winding thread around your wrists. Thick, red, soaked in something that smells like crushed rose petals and vinegar. Ritual thread, she says. It won't stop her, but it might slow the bleed. The spiral isn't just a symbol, she tells you, eyes locked on yours. It's a door, and you're standing on the threshold. That night, you refuse to sleep. You chew bitter roots the villagers once used to stay awake during morning vigils. You hold ice to your neck, slap your cheeks, recite nonsense rhymes just to keep your mind spinning. It works, until it doesn't. Sometime after midnight, your eyelids betray you. They flutter, and you fall. Into water, dark, bottomless. It's not a dream, it's a memory, but not yours, hers. You see her again, Luda, before she was the bell wife. She's standing in the chapel, holding a wax tablet, eyes wide with fear. The spiral is already forming on the floor at her feet, glowing faintly with each breath she takes. Men surround her, village elders, stern, cold. One holds a bell, its clapper removed. Another holds a needle threaded with silver string. She pleads. You can't hear the words, but you feel them. A plea not to be silenced, not to be made a vessel. She didn't mean for them to see her memories. She didn't mean to share the spiral. But it's too late. They believe she's become a conduit for something older. Something hiding in thought itself. And they think they can contain it by sealing her, so they cut her, thread her mouth shut, press wax over her eyes, bury her beneath the chapel and flood it with salt water. You wake choking. Your mouth is full of thread. Your pillow is soaked in wax. You pull a shard of something sharp and white from between your teeth. It's part of a bell. You run to the lake. The water is lower again, another foot down. The steeple fully visible now, the chapel cross casting a long skeletal shadow in the moonlight. At the edge of the shore, you find a man kneeling. You recognize him, one of the dream hunters, the one who disappeared. He turns to you slowly. There's no life in his eyes, no fear, no recognition, only spirals carved where his pupils should be. He opens his mouth. Inside is a tiny bell, and it rings. You fall to your knees as the sound rips through you. Not loud, not painful, but deep, wrong. Like a sound made before language, echoing through the ancient hallways of the mind. When you wake, it's morning again. You lie on the shore, the lake still rippling faintly, and in your hand is a fragment of that man's tooth. Carved into it, a perfect spiral. Historians still debate whether psychic phenomena can imprint themselves on locations, whether emotional trauma, ritual violence, and communal belief can literally bend the rules of reality in fixed spaces. Some call these places thin zones, places where the veil between conscious and unconscious, living and dead, real and remembered, is paper thin. This village, it's not a place. It's a recording, one that's been left on repeat and you're beginning to skip. Section 8. You can't stay silent anymore. You've spent over a week trapped in the village, caught between what's real and what's remembered, what's physical, and what dreams claw into your skull. And now the signs are everywhere. The boundary is collapsing. The spiral has moved beyond your dreams. It's etching itself into stone, wood, breath, blood. This morning when you woke, your bedsheets had been twisted into knots shaped like spirals. Not folded, knotted. You couldn't have done it yourself. not without waking up, not without breaking every bone in your hands. And yet your fingers were intact, though twitching, like they remembered tying something they didn't understand. You take a knife from the village kitchen, not to protect yourself. That's not possible anymore. But for cutting the thread, you've realized something new about it. It's not just symbolic. The red cord Magda wound around your wrists, it frayed overnight, as if something had been tugging at it from the other side. You examine it now under morning light and you realize it's not just thread. It's hair, human hair, dyed red. You drop it and step away. Magda won't meet your eyes when you ask her about it. Just says, everything binds, everything leaks. This place is full of echoes and stains. Don't expect a clean cure. You walk through the village and see the others affected too. One man stands by his front door, just banging his head slowly against the frame. Not enough to bleed, just enough, as if trying to shake loose a dream that won't stop repeating. A woman beside the well has been braiding grass into spiral shapes and lining them up along the edge like wards. And little Toma? He's gone. Vanished overnight. Magda says nothing. The villagers say nothing. But there's a fresh spiral carved into the trunk of the tallest tree at the edge of the woods. It's pulsing. You don't want to go back to the lake, but something draws you. The water is lower again. You can see the full outline of the chapel beneath its surface now. The stone steps, the arched doorway, the steeple, long cracked, now lies exposed like the vertebrae of a drowned god. You kneel at the shore and whisper into the wind, "What do you want?" No answer, just the waves. But in your chest you feel a response. Not words, not thoughts, a pull. Like your body remembers something your brain refuses to. That night you stay by the water. You sleep on the shore. You don't dream of the chapel. You dream of before. You see her as she was. Luda, not the bell wife. Just a girl in a green shawl, picking herbs and singing to herself. She's humming the 6-note melody, but it's not sinister, not yet. It's just a song, something sweet. Her voice is bright, and the air around her hums like summer. Then the vision shifts. She's older. The villagers surround her. She's frightened but still smiling. She doesn't know what's happening yet. They call her the Keeper, a gift to hold memory. They ask her to remember us into heaven. You feel her joy, her terror, her descent. She didn't want to share the spiral. She just wanted to keep them alive, through story, through memory. But the spiral, it grows with every name remembered, every sorrow held too long, and soon she couldn't stop it. Couldn't control who saw what or when. Dreams bled into each other. Mothers began dreaming of children they never bore. Farmers forgot their crops but remembered deaths that hadn't happened yet. That's when the village decided she was too full of memory, too full of grief. So they silenced her. You watch it happen. The needle through the lip, the wax poured into her eyes, the bell pressed to her chest, not to mark her as sacred, but as sealed. She fought, she begged. But they lowered her anyway. Into the spiral chamber. They closed the chapel above her, rang the bell one last time, and tried to forget. You wake screaming. The lake has dried another inch, and something is now visible at the chapel threshold, just beneath the surface, a hand. You return to the village to tell Magda, but she's already gone. Her house is empty. On the table where her thread once lay is a bell, small, hollow, melted halfway down one side. Its sound is gone, but the memory lingers. The villagers begin gathering in the square, not by choice, by pull. Their eyes are unfocused. Some are humming. Others are whispering names. You don't recognize them. You don't think they're alive anymore. Maybe they never were. You look down. Your shoes are wet, but not from the lake, from beneath. Water is seeping up through the stones of the square, and the spiral is now completely illuminated. You try to run. You try to speak, but the words catch in your throat. Because she's behind you. Not in a dream, not in a vision. Here, in the daylight, the bell wife, Luda. She no longer wears the veil. Her face is not monstrous. It's sad, human, but impossibly still, as if painted. Her mouth is gone. Her eyes are wax. Yet you hear her, not in your ears, but inside your bones. I didn't want to be the spiral. You fall to your knees. She kneels beside you, presses a finger to your chest. You feel every memory she ever held pour into you at once. Births, deaths, betrayals, weddings, dreams, screams, fires, songs, names, and then silence. The villagers are gone. The square is empty. The water has returned to the lake. You lie on your back staring at the sky, and you realize you're the keeper now. The spiral didn't die, it just found a new shape. Historians will never find this village. They'll mark it as myth, a cartographic phantom, but as a superstition whispered in the margins of old texts. Some will chase it in dreams, most will never come close. But you remember now, and memory is forever. Section 9. The silence doesn't last. Not really. You wake up the morning after the lake's return and realize something has changed. At first, it's subtle. The birds are back. There's wind again. For a moment, you think it's over. You even dare to hope that the spiral has been satisfied. That whatever ritual you've accidentally completed, the witnessing, the naming, the dreaming, has closed the loop. But as you walk back toward the village square, you stop cold. Because now the houses are empty. Not just quiet, abandoned. Doors hanging open, food rotting in bowls, steam still curling from a forgotten cup of tea, as if everyone stood up mid-sentence and walked into the woods, or into the lake, or into the dream, and left their lives behind like coats on pegs. You step inside one home, then another, all the same. Beds unmade, books open to mid-chapters, a chair rocking gently beside a cold fireplace, and something else. Spirals, everywhere. Drawn in condensation on mirrors, burned into cutting boards, woven into doilies and tapestries and frayed patches sewn into jackets, even in children's toys, whittled into the wooden wheels of a broken pushcart. You feel the pressure building again, that low thrum behind the teeth, that itch inside memory. You stumble back to Magda's house, forgetting for a moment that she's gone too. But the door is still ajar, and inside, her table is bare except for a final note, scrawled hastily in charcoal. You are the mouth now. Speak carefully. You sit with that for a long time. Mouth of what? Speak what? Does the spiral need a voice now? You glance at your own hands. The skin along your wrists is cracking again. The same pattern. The spiral widening, literally widening into a pale network of thin, glowing veins. You know what this means. You're not keeping the spiral. The spiral is keeping you. That night, the dreams return. But not as they were. There's no chapel, no lake, no bellwife. You find yourself walking through a place between. A field, flat, endless, lit only by a dull violet sky and a horizon that bends in ways it shouldn't. Scattered throughout the grass are hundreds of people, sitting silently, knees drawn to chests. Every single one wears a wax mask. No eyes, no mouths, just soft white contours. As you walk between them, you realize they're humming. Not the lullaby, something older, the spiral in song form, a tune with no beginning and no end. You try to speak, but your throat tightens, your tongue feels stitched, your vision doubles, and then she appears. Not Luda, not the bellwife, someone else. A girl, young, maybe 10, hair matted with dew. She walks barefoot towards you, arms crossed over a thick book that looks older than the sky. She doesn't say anything, just offers you the book. When you take it, her mouth splits open in a smile that's far too wide. Not malicious, just empty. Like she's already forgotten what a face is supposed to do. You open the book. Inside are pages and pages of your own handwriting, entries you've never written, dreams you don't remember dreaming, a future you haven't lived yet. In one passage, you find a scene of you speaking before an audience, not a lecture, not a speech, a sermon. But your words are not yours. They're the spirals. Each sentence a coil, pulling your listeners deeper into the memory until their eyes glaze and their mouths begin to hum. You slam the book shut, but it's too late. The people around you, the wax-faced husks, are standing now. They've noticed you. They begin to walk forward, slowly, arms extended, not with menace, but with hunger. Not for flesh, for memory. You run, you fall, you scream, and wake up. But something is in your hands. The book, real now, bound in wax leather, still warm. You throw it into the fire, but it won't burn. It sits in the flames, stubborn and untouched, as if heat is only an idea to it. You flee the house. The village square is different now. The spiral has grown again, wider, deeper. The stones themselves have shifted to accommodate it. A pit has opened in the center, descending into the dark. You can't see the bottom. You don't want to. Yet you step closer. A voice rises from within. Not a scream, not a moan. A prayer, a collective whisper of names, some familiar, most not. You lean over the edge. Your reflection peers back at you, but its eyes are spiral-shaped. It smiles and mouths 3 words. You're almost ready. You stagger back, heart pounding, almost ready for what? To be her? To replace her? Or worse, to release her completely? Historians still argue whether mass hysteria could ever be purely psychological, whether a community can, over generations, pass down a living delusion so deep that it becomes truth. That consensus hallucination might evolve into ritual. That belief, unchallenged, becomes reality. But they don't know what you know now. The spiral isn't a belief. It's a blueprint, a pattern the mind follows until it reshapes the world around it. And now, you are part of the blueprint. You are the mouth, and something is waiting to speak through you. Section 10. You leave the spiral pit behind. But even as you walk away, you feel it tethered to you, like a hook behind your sternum, like invisible threads pulling softly against your ribs with every step. The sky has changed, not the weather, color. It's now a thick, bruised purple, neither day nor night. The sun remains hidden, though it feels like early morning. The clouds move too quickly, like a time lapse no one paused. You glance down at your feet and see grass curling back into the earth, reversing its growth, shrinking away from where you walk. Reality is decaying. You walk past homes you've seen dozens of times, yet now they're different. Taller, narrower, bent at angles no structure should be able to stand. Doors lead to nowhere. Windows look into other rooms that couldn't possibly exist in the layout. And every single mirror you pass now reflects you, but with spiral eyes, spiral teeth, a smile too wide. The villagers are still gone, or maybe they're not. In one of the empty houses, you see a dress moving just beyond the doorway, drifting like it's caught in a gentle breeze, but there's no one wearing it. You turn a corner and see a line of shoes, adult-sized, child-sized, all arranged in a perfect circle around a bowl of wax. The wax is warm. You hear humming behind you. You turn. No one. But your own lips are moving. You're humming the lullaby again, the one you don't remember learning but now can't stop. It's time to go back to the lake. You feel it calling. The water is nearly gone now. What's left is thick, like old ink. The chapel beneath it is fully exposed, its bell tower collapsed, stone walls pocked with rot. The doors hang open, and on the threshold there's a figure, not her, someone new. It's Toma. His shirt is torn, his feet bare and bleeding, but his eyes are focused, calm. You waited too long, he says softly. You step closer. Waited for what? She needed a vessel, he says. You were too careful, too scared, so now she's dividing. You don't understand. She's going into everyone now, he whispers. Not just one host, not just one dreamer, everyone who's ever heard the spiral, even once. He steps aside, gesturing toward the open chapel. You need to go down. It's not a ritual anymore. It's an infection. You hesitate. Inside, the spiral glows on the floor, etched in stone. Around it, bones, wax, bells. Some broken, some melted, some still intact. You descend. Each step feels heavier than the last. Like the air itself is growing dense, thick with meaning. At the bottom of the stairwell, you find the true heart of the spiral. Not a symbol, a book, bound in skin, inked in wax, heavy. When you open it, you find pages filled with drawings, faces, hundreds of them, all sleeping, some peaceful, some twisted in terror. And at the very end, a blank page. A quill lies beside it. No ink, just a single drop of blood left on the tip. Your blood. You know instinctively that this is how it spreads, through the written spiral. It's not just in the dreams anymore. It's in story, memory, ink, speech. You close the book. It doesn't help. From somewhere behind the walls, you hear her again. The bell wife, Luda. Only this time she's not humming. She's laughing. A slow, hollow sound like water dripping into a cave. You climb back out and find Toma waiting. He offers you a wax seal, small, round, blank. If you carry this, he says, you'll remember what's yours. You'll know what memories are real. But what if I don't want to remember anymore, you ask. He shrugs. Then burn it. Forget everything. But she'll still know your name. You pocket the seal. As you return to the village, you see more signs of the spiral's reach. A dog circles endlessly in the square, following a path etched into the dirt. A baby cries with a sound too old, too deep. A radio left on inside an empty house whispers lullabies in 6-note loops. And all across the village, spiral patterns are shifting, on doors and trees, even the sky. They move when you blink. They stretch and flex like muscles. You hear a voice, your own voice, repeating a phrase over and over, echoing in your head. She was never buried. She was only paused. You remember what Magda said. You are the mouth now, and the mouth does not close. You speak her name once, and the wind stills. You speak it twice, and the lake dries completely. You speak it a third time, and the chapel bell rings without moving. Historians still argue whether a story can function as a curse, whether the mere telling of certain narratives can embed patterns into the subconscious, spread like viruses. Some whisper about thought contagions, mimetic disease, dream-borne infections passed down through oral histories. But none of them imagine this. A village dreaming the same nightmare for a century. And you, the final chapter. The page that was meant to stay blank, but no longer is. Section 11. The wind stops. Completely. You stand at the center of the village, and there is no sound, not even your heartbeat. The trees no longer rustle. The birds are gone again. The radio has fallen silent. Even the spiral in the dirt has stilled. It's waiting. You realize something important now. This isn't the end of the spiral. This is the eye, the calm at the center of the storm where everything holds its breath. You walk toward the chapel once more, each footstep sounding like thunder in the silence. The ground feels spongy beneath your feet, like memory, not earth, like every step sinks into another's dream. Inside, the book still lies open, but the drawings have changed. They're moving, not animated, not alive, just shifting, as if the faces are reacting to your presence. They twist, smiles fade, eyes narrow. Some turn away, hiding themselves in the margins. You flip to the last page. It's no longer blank. It shows you. Not sleeping, not dead, but speaking. To a crowd of people whose eyes are spirals, whose mouths are full of thread. Your caption reads, "The First True Dreamer." You slam the book shut. That title, it doesn't belong to you. It belonged to her, Luda. So why now? Why you? The lake is fully dry. Where it once stood is now a crater of salt and black sand. At its center is a staircase descending into earth. You hadn't seen it before because the water obscured it, but now it's open like a wound in the world. You descend. The stairs spiral downward. Of course they do. You lose count after 50 steps. The walls are damp and covered in carvings, words written in a language you don't understand but comprehend. Your brain doesn't translate. It just absorbs. Phrases like, "She carries grief like others carry lungs." The deeper the dream, the wider the spiral. Remembering is the final sin. At the bottom, a chamber, stone, circular. In its center, a raised dais, and on it a cradle. But not for a baby, for a bell. You approach slowly. The bell is massive, taller than you, cracked, covered in wax and soot. Runes run along its rim. Its clapper hangs outside like an umbilical cord cut too soon. You reach out. Your hand trembles. The spiral burns in your palm. You touch the bell. And then you see everything. Not in sequence, not in order, but in memory shatter. Luda screaming underwater. The villagers praying in circles. The spiral being painted on skin, tongues, brains. Children born with dreams that aren't theirs. A book read aloud in a classroom, spreading the hum. A radio broadcast whispering her lullaby in broken Morse code. A village council choosing silence for salvation. You, walking into the lake without knowing it. You, holding a candle made of her spine. You, mouthing words you never learned. You. You are not a visitor. You never were. You were born here. The village forgot. But the spiral remembered, and it called you back. You drop to your knees, gasping. The bell tolls once, without sound, a vibration through time. The chamber collapses inwards. But you're no longer there. You're in a classroom, reading a story aloud. You're on a podcast, describing a nightmare village. You're on a YouTube channel, sharing folklore. You're everywhere the spiral needs you to be. Because now it isn't limited to a village. It's in words, in voice, in every listener. Historians still debate whether cursed texts can exist, documents or stories so intrinsically tied to trauma that simply reading them passes on the wound. They cite urban legends, lost manuscripts, tapes with no labels, but they don't understand. The curse was never the medium. It was always the memory, and now you carry it. You leave the chamber. The village is completely still, except for one thing. A girl stands in the square. She wears a green shawl. She's humming. She looks at you with no anger, only sorrow. You step toward her. "Luda," you ask. She nods, but then lifts a finger to her lips. A reminder, not silence. Respect. She turns, walks into the woods. You don't follow. Instead, you sit beside the spiral. Not in fear, not in confusion, But in stillness, you understand now, she never wanted vengeance, never wanted worship, only for someone to hold the memory without breaking it. And you've done that. But now, what happens next? Section 12. You don't leave the spiral that night. You sit there long after the sky fades to an indigo that doesn't resemble night so much as the inside of an eyelid, velvety, heavy, and without stars. The square around you is frozen, yet alive. The stones beneath you are warm, almost like breath. You listen. No wind, no insects, just that low, gentle vibration humming through the earth, barely perceptible, as if the village itself is dreaming again. And you, well, you're not quite awake anymore, are you? It begins with a name, one that rises from your lips without warning, Nadia. You don't know anyone named Nadia, but you taste the syllables as though they're buried in your tongue. The name echoes in the empty air and ripples the spiral's pattern like a stone dropped into still water. You remember something Magda once muttered, not to you, but to herself, as if half asleep. The spiral records us, each one. One name, one loop. You say another, Anselm, then Petra, then Joseph. Each name brings a fresh pulse beneath you, like heartbeats or footsteps. You don't know how long you sit there repeating names, whispering them into the night. But eventually you realize you're not alone. They've returned, the villagers, not walking, not standing, just sitting at the edges of the square. Each in silence, eyes unfocused, mouths slightly open. Their bodies flicker between solid and translucent, like they're caught mid-memory, unsure whether they're remembered or forgotten. One by one, they begin to hum. The lullaby, that 6-note pattern that loops like a child's music box with a broken window. But it sounds different now. Less haunting, softer, warmer, like mourning. They're not worshiping the spiral, they're grieving with it. And in that moment, it dawns on you. The spiral was never about control. It's a containment, a way to hold everything that couldn't be said, couldn't be screamed, couldn't be buried. Grief, shame, guilt, fear. Memories too painful to live with, but too sacred to lose. The spiral is a vault, a pattern meant to preserve. You rise slowly, your body creaks. You've aged in spirit if not in flesh, and you walk the spiral's path step by step, heel to toe. At its center now is not a pit, not a book, but a mirror. Small, cracked, covered in dust. You wipe it clean, and your reflection looks back, but not just yours. You see faces behind you, hundreds, maybe thousands. They're not ghosts, they're rememberers, each one silently carrying something for someone else. You whisper, "What now?" No voice answers, but your reflection smiles, a real smile, yours. Because you already know. You leave the square and walk the path out of the village for the first time since arriving. This time, the forest doesn't twist. The sky remains calm. The air smells like cedar and iron and river moss. You reach the border where the dream ends and the world begins. And there, waiting, is a child. Not Toma, a little girl, green shawl, barefoot. She offers you something small, a spool of red thread. You take it and tie it around your wrist, not to bind, not to ward, but to remember. Then you walk. The world receives you again. Cars drive past, people talk loudly on phones. A plane hums overhead, the supermarket opens, your phone buzzes. The weight of normality settles over your shoulders like a too light coat. You think, maybe I imagined it. Maybe I fell asleep in an unfamiliar town and wove a week's worth of dreams into some elaborate waking hallucination. You think that until the moment you sit down at your desk, and there it is, the book, the one from the chapel. Only it's changed. Now it looks like your own journal. Familiar binding, scribbles on the edges, your name written inside the cover. But when you flip through the pages, they're blank, every single one, except for the last, which reads, "Now write it again." Because that's the spiral's nature, isn't it? Not to trap, but to preserve, to echo, to pass memory forward when no one else can. You pick up your pen, your hands are steady. You begin with the first sentence. "Hey guys, tonight we're going to visit a village that no longer exists on any map." You write it all, the lake, the chapel, the bell, the dreams. The spiral, you don't change anything because it's not yours to edit. When you finish, the room feels heavier. Not ominous, just full, like the moment after a final note in a long song, like silence with shape. You sleep deeply that night, no nightmares, only a lullaby hummed in your own voice, soft, repetitive, comforting. Historians still argue whether ritual memory transfer ever existed, Whether entire villages once entrusted their knowledge to chosen vessels, preserving generational grief as a form of ancestral continuity. They debate bone inscriptions, wax recordings, mnemonic chants, but they'll never agree, because the spiral never leaves behind evidence, just stories, just songs, just you, and now you're humming it too. Section 13. Weeks have passed. You're back home, if home still means anything. The city doesn't feel the same. The lights are too bright, the walls too clean, people too loud, too busy, too unaware of what's beneath the noise. The spiral hasn't followed you exactly, but it's not gone either. You feel it when you close your eyes, when a tune gets stuck in your head and won't leave, when someone says your name and for a moment you don't recognize it as yours. You've been writing, not just the story, but letters, dozens of them, to strangers, to historians, to folklorists. You don't expect replies. That's not the point. You just need someone to hold the memory with you, even if they don't know they're doing it. You start seeing signs, a chalk spiral drawn on a subway wall, a child drawing the same shape over and over in the corner of a cafe window, a voicemail from an unknown number that's nothing but humming. You check the book again. It's filling itself, names, places, dates. You didn't write them, but they're in your handwriting. You don't know how to stop it, so you don't try. Instead, you begin to catalog, section by section, loop by loop. Each story shares the same structure, a beginning no one remembers choosing, a middle full of things they tried to forget, an end that never really ends. Sometimes you think about returning to the village, to the lake. But when you check the maps, it's gone. The coordinates don't work. The satellite image is just a stretch of forest. No roads, no lake, no chapel, just void. You drive out anyway. You park on the side of the highway and walk into the woods, but there's nothing there. No path, no bell, only silence. And then from somewhere in the stillness, a single name floats into your head. Alina. You whisper it aloud. The trees rustle, though there's no wind. The spiral is listening. You understand now that it doesn't need a place. It never did. It lives in remembrance, in repetition, and most importantly, in retelling. You begin to speak to no one, to everyone, to the spiral. You recount everything, every sound, every step, every hum. And when you stop, the forest around you feels warmer, like it heard you, and like it's grateful. Historians sometimes call these events cultural memory nodes, places where so many stories concentrate that the ground itself seems saturated with meaning. They theorize about ley lines, dream geographies, psychogeographic resonance. But they never quite get it right, because the spiral isn't tied to the land. It's tied to you, to the storyteller, the rememberer, the one who holds the thread. When you return home, the book is gone. In its place is a blank journal, new pages, clean cover, untouched. You pick it up, turn to the first page, and for the first time, you write something entirely your own. This story has been told. The next day, your dreams are quiet. No bells, no voices, just a gentle breeze and the feeling of grass beneath your feet. You think you've earned that peace, but the spiral is still out there, not angry, not asleep, just waiting, because someone someday will forget, and the spiral hates to be forgotten, so it finds the next listener, the next hum, the next thread to pull. And the story begins again, not exactly the same, but close enough to remind you you were there, even if no one else remembers. Section 14. Your days stretch on like threads of wax. You move through the world like someone newly awakened, but also newly burdened, like someone who's seen the blueprints of a dream and can't unsee the shapes it etched into reality. The journal sits untouched on your desk. You haven't written in it since the final line. This story has been told, but still it waits. The air around it has a weight, a hush, and you begin to notice something else. The people around you, friends, co-workers, strangers, start behaving oddly. A barista at the coffee shop hums the lullaby under her breath, not knowing she's doing it. A man on the train doodles in a notebook, just scribbles at first, but you catch a glimpse and see a spiral, drawn so tightly it's ripped the paper. A child at the park counts in a pattern that makes no sense, until it does. 3 forward, 2 back, 5 forward, 1 pause, repeat. The same sequence you walked in the dream spiral. You ask her what it means. She shrugs. It's just a game, she says, and runs off. You walk home a little faster, Because now you know it's spreading, not like an infection, like a memory, resurfacing, reawakening, reclaiming what was always there. That night, you open the journal again. The pages are still blank. You don't know what you're waiting for. Maybe nothing, maybe everything. You sleep, and in your dream, the village returns. Only this time, it's not decayed, it's bright, clean. The lake is full and sparkling. The chapel is whole. The bell is silent but unbroken. People smile as they pass you. They nod, they hum, but not the lullaby. Something new. A tune you've never heard, yet somehow know. You follow the sound through the village to a hill that didn't exist before. Atop it stands a woman. Not Luda, not the girl, someone else. She turns when you approach. Her eyes are not spirals, they're mirrors. And in them, you see yourself, but not broken, not confused, whole. You finish the first story, she says. Now write the second. You wake with tears in your eyes. No fear, just something that feels like relief, like purpose. That day, the journal isn't blank anymore. A single line sits at the top of the first page. You didn't write it, but it's in your handwriting. The spiral protects what memory forgets. You feel it then. Not a curse, not a dream, but a task. One you were always meant to carry. Not alone, but first, because it begins with one, and then another, and another. Each person holding a piece. Each person keeping the spiral alive, not to feed it, but to prevent it from vanishing. To make sure the grief isn't forgotten. To ensure the stories, the voices, the names, the weight of the lost aren't erased by time. You're not afraid anymore. Not because the spiral has left you, but because it's settled. It knows you won't let it die, and you won't. You begin writing, this time not the old story, a new one, yours. And it doesn't start with fear, it starts with a name, not Luta, your own. Because if the spiral is to survive, it needs a beginning that's honest. A beginning that says, I was once a dreamer too. And so you write, by candlelight, in the hush of early morning, as the world wakes up around you, unaware that something ancient is humming beneath its feet. Something not angry, not hungry, just waiting to be remembered, because that's the spiral's truth. It's not a curse, it's a promise, and now it's yours to keep. Section 15. The final days feel different, not dramatic, not storm-laced or soaked in dread, just quieter. Everything feels like a held breath, like the last few seconds of a song before the silence swallows the last note. You go about your daily life, coffee in the morning, a walk around the block, your usual spot by the window with your journal open. But now you notice things you never did before. The shadows curve slightly when you're not looking. The wind carries familiar names you haven't spoken in years. A bird lands on your balcony and stares too long, as if waiting for a cue. And in your dreams, the village no longer asks questions. It listens. Each night, it feels less like a place you're visiting and more like home. You start to remember things, your actual childhood memories that never seemed important before. A pattern your grandmother used to knit into sweaters. A rhythm your uncle used to tap on the table. A story your mother told you about a town that vanished after a fire, where no bodies were ever found, only shoes arranged in a circle. You thought they were just fragments. Now you know they were pieces of the spiral. It's been with you longer than you knew. It doesn't own you, but it chose you. One morning, you wake before sunrise and realize that your journal is almost full. The pages are heavy with ink, with stories told and untold. You flip to the last few blank sheets and know you're nearing the final loop. But here's the thing, the spiral doesn't end. Not really. It only passes the thread to someone else. You make a decision. You pack your journal into a small cloth bag, wrap it tight, and walk to the post office. You write a name on the label. Not someone you know well, just someone who's listened, commented, shared a story of their own once. You send it, and you don't expect an answer. Because that's not how the spiral works. It doesn't close. It opens. Later that day, you return home to find a small package on your doorstep. No return address. Inside is a red wax candle and a note. I remember the bell too. You smile. You light the candle. And for the first time in a long time, you feel like you're not carrying the spiral alone. Historians often talk about collective memory, the idea that a culture can remember things a single person never lived through. They debate how myth becomes tradition, how stories turn into faith, and how people can feel nostalgia for places they've never been. But they don't understand how the spiral binds people across time and place. how it weaves grief, hope, fear, and song into a single shared pulse, a rhythm, a lullaby, a promise. You feel it even now. Not heavy anymore, just present. And as you sit at your window, the candle flickering, the journal scent, the memory shared, you hear the faintest hum in the distance, not from outside, from everywhere, from everyone who has ever heard the story. They're holding it now too, and they'll keep it safe. You close your eyes, and the spiral continues, wind down. Now, just rest here with me for a while. Let the story settle behind your eyes, where the images still float. Wax candles, crumbling chapels, spiral paths carved into soft earth. The weight of memory is lighter now, isn't it? Not gone, never gone, but woven into something gentler, something that doesn't press so hard on your chest. You've walked far tonight, through dreams not your own, through silence and song, through a village that doesn't exist on any map, but might very well exist in you now. And that's all right, because not everything has to be real to be remembered. Some things, some truths, only survive when they're shared in whispers, passed on in story, in dreams. If you listen closely now, you might still hear it. A hush between breaths, a low hum, almost like music, like someone just down the hall is singing a lullaby they've known forever, even if they never learned it. That's the spiral. Still turning, still soft, still kind. And if tonight you sleep a little deeper, dream a little longer, know that you've done your part. You held the memory, you didn't let it die. And when you wake, you'll carry it forward, not as a burden, but as a thread, a single quiet thread in something far bigger. So drift now. The lights are low, the world is still, and you are safe. The spiral is sleeping, and so are you. End of script. Sweet dreams.